Hey guys, and welcome to Indie Game Culture. We are doing a little podcast today in honor of the Game of the Year awards. And at the moment, it's about a few hours away at the time of recording. It's going to be happening in a few hours' time. I will probably be in my bed. JT's the only one that has an actual chance of actually watching it live.
Whoa, what time is it in English time?
I'm not
It'll be
100% sure. No, I know it's too late for me to even think about it.
Because I got a sleep disorder, so I might have a chance, is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
But yeah, we're going to be doing a little rundown of our indie games of the year. So not the AAAs. We're going to be purely focusing on indie games as indie game culture tends to do. And we're going to go through our top 5. But just before we jump into our personal top 5, I wanted to run down through the official top 5 for indie games that the Game Awards and Geoff, Keighley and his crew have picked. So we had Neon White, Stray, Cult of the Lamb, Sifu, and Tunic. What did you guys
think? Go Tunic!
Anyone want to jump in and tell me what you think of the 5 they picked?
Honestly, I haven't played most of them, but Tunic is absolutely deserving of the spot. That's actually one. I won't talk about too much detail now because that's one of the ones in my 5. But yeah, I loved Tunic. I really, really did.
Yeah, I haven't gotten a chance to play Tunic, but Cult of the Lamb, it kind of makes sense that it got on there. I mean, there's some of it, the dark humor and stuff is just so quirky and funny. I think it, as a game, like there have been better like roguelikes and base building games made, but it just added enough of that quirky dark humor that it makes sense that it's gonna get up there.
No, I definitely enjoy it, and I agree for the most part with a lot of them. Like in terms of like production value, they're probably the highest 5 that you can probably think of, maybe aside from 1 or 2. I don't know a ton about Neon White, to be honest. That one completely escaped me this year. But
yeah, that one was definitely off my radar.
Yeah. I'm relatively aware of the other 4. Call of the Lamb, one that I played all the way through. Stray as well, but I kind of have my hang-ups with the fact that Stray's on there because I don't consider it an indie game because Annapurna is a very rich publishing house. So.
Yeah, that's probably like the sort of most well-known sort of indie.
Yeah. I had to search it up online. It's like, wait, that's an indie game? It looks like really professionally made. Like they had a lot of money put into the graphics and everything.
Annapurna tends to be in that box most of the time, and as well as that, Sony gave that a lot of backing as well. So it's one of those. It's kind of like the Kenna Burgess spirits of this year. In my head, so I agree for the most part. But we'll not dwell on that too much. We'll get into our personal picks, our top 5, and we decided that Melika, you're going to lead the line and give us.
Indeed.
5.
So my number 1 has to be Beacon Pines. I don't know if either of you two heard of that one.
I've heard of it, and just to let people behind the curtain. I'm the one that kind of picks what things we cover in terms of reviews and go chasing people. And Beacon Pines is one of those I was very much on the fence about, looking from the outside in.
It kind of did. It definitely went under the radar before launch because I remember very clearly it was released on the same day as Slime Rancher 2, which I had been really pumped for because I loved the first Slime Rancher. But I actually decided not to play Slime Rancher 2 on the basis that I didn't realize it was going to be a game preview rather than the full game. And I heard from other people that it was kind of like missing things. There were glitches, and I decided, you know what, I've waited so long for this game. I want to experience it in its full glory. So I'm very patiently waiting for the full release of Slime Rancher 2, even though I'm desperate to play it because I want it to be wow rather than, oh, that's pretty good. So I decided to play Beacon Pines instead, and I was just so totally hooked. I can't remember the last time that I was just that engaged by a game. Like I could not put it down. Like I started it, I want to say about midday, and I was literally just on it until nighttime because I didn't want to stop. It's just got the most incredible, beautiful, fascinating story that's so much deeper than it seems at first because it's got these kind of like cute hand-drawn animal people living in their town and all seems perfect and wonderful, and then all of a sudden these sort of dark, mysterious storylines start weaving their way, and it's got this gameplay mechanic that is absolutely genius where you can go back in time and it like branches off into different stories depending on what choices you make, and you collect these things called charms, which are words, and there'll be certain conversations at points during the story where if you substitute a certain word, you'll get a completely different new storyline branching out from it. And there's, I want to say it's like 15 or so different endings. Like there's a lot of different endings that you have to like branch out to collect them all. And just the way that your choices interact with the game and make completely different storylines. Like there's so much going on. It's just absolutely phenomenal, and you wouldn't expect it when you start it off. On it, like fun thing about this one as well is that it was originally a Kickstarter, so that was how it was funded, and yeah, like I find that there's quite a few other games, because I know For the King, which was another one of my favorites, not from this year, but from previous years, was also Kickstarter funded, and I think there are some real gems that can come through Kickstarter, but Beacon Pines was definitely one of them. I would fully recommend, like, anyone who hasn't played it, get on it. It's wonderful.
Excellent. And in terms of the gameplay for that, is it very much narrative driven, or what does that
Yeah,
look
very
like?
much. So it's technically, I guess, an RPG in that you do sort of wander around talking to people and stuff. Yeah, because I wouldn't call it an adventure so much, because it is not like any jumping or actions really. It's literally just walking around, choosing the locations and talking to people. But it's got different settings in the town that are stored there. No, you know what I mean. There's different areas you can go to and navigate through, and there'll be different characters you can speak to and different choices you can make. You can find the charms hidden in certain locations, like by interacting with things. So I know there's one you have to run through a dandelion field. There's another one you have to like interact with a tree stump or something like that. So there's loads of different ways to collect these charms that you just find around, including talking to people, because sometimes you'll talk to someone in a conversation and they'll say a word, and then afterwards you'll get that word in your charm collection. I think there's about 40 different charms that you can collect. There's a lot, but some of them are for a DLC that hasn't been released yet, because they're planning to create a cooking DLC, which is like a little mini game. So I'm looking forward to when they release that. But in terms of the main story itself, it's very much about exploring the narrative through wandering through the town and collecting stories from the different characters that you perhaps didn't have access to previously.
Nice. I have to ask, I know I saw, like, just because town made of animals and stuff, and they're all, like, personified, was it a lot like Night in the Woods in that sense? I don't know if you played that, but it's kind of the same sense where all of the
Night
characters
in the Woods,
are
I'm
animals.
going to quickly Google it, because that sounds so familiar. I'm not sure if I played it or not.
Yeah,
I've definitely heard of Night in the Woods.
It's definitely the same kind of sense. Like,
yeah,
you
no,
play
I
as
remember.
a
I remember watching the trailer for Night in the Woods, but I didn't actually play it. The art style is completely different though, because Beacon Pines is hand drawn, and it's always just like really beautiful, almost watercolor-esque designs for the characters. They're so cute. Honestly, I would fully recommend checking the game out, because it's so beautiful. It's one of the most beautiful games I've played in terms of just such a unique, quirky, whimsical style. Like, it's not all in your face. Oh my gosh, look at those details. It's incredible graphics. It's very much, this is an indie game with a unique style that's totally unlike anything else. You can see the passion that the artist has for the characters and world that they've created, and it's honestly such a beautiful masterpiece.
Oh, nice.
No, that's definitely what swayed me whenever I was deciding whether we should cover it or not, because in terms of the trailer itself, they don't do a particularly good job of kind of showing you what the game does and why it's good, but
no,
the
I
art
agree.
style really stood out. So
yeah, with the trailer, I watched it and I was like, yeah, I'll give it a try. But I wasn't expecting to love it as much as I ended up doing, because the game is just so much deeper than the trailer. I think one of the reasons the trailer isn't as good is because a lot of the stuff you pick up during the game is such a surprise, and they wanted to keep it that way to preserve the twist, because a lot of the twists happen relatively early on and just keep on twisting. So they could only really show certain stuff in the trailer without it sort of breaking that surprise. So I do understand why they did it, but I do think they definitely undersold themselves there, because it's so much better than you'd give it credit for from watching the trailer.
Awesome. Well, I mean, guys, if you're looking for a narrative adventure, that's probably the one to go for. JT, in terms of your top or your number 5, is it going to be a narrative adventure? What have you got?
I know I picked a couple narrative adventure ones. To be honest, I have to go back and see what I picked for my top
I remember
5.
You said Road Wars, which I was looking
Yes.
after you mentioned it. That's narrative as well, is it not?
Yeah, I first got the chance, I got to review Road Warden, and I thought it was okay the first time. It was one of those text adventure kind of games, so you have to really like reading when you're playing it, and I don't know, I guess I'd read a bit, and I started to get into it a bit, and my first playthrough was kind of bad, because I ended up burning like one of the settlements to the ground, and I kind of saved the area, and then on my second playthrough, I realized that I'd helped out like a tyrant stay in power, and helped her like commit like atrocities again. And I was like, oh, I'm a horrible person. And I ended up like doing the right thing that time, and I saved everybody. I was like, yeah, and I don't know, I guess it was one of those games that it was very minimalistic, like it didn't have a lot of showcases for like art or beauty and stuff, but it was still really, it had enough wow factor in terms of like it make you feel rewarded for your works, like, oh, I actually had like a big impact on this community, I feel so good. And also there's the final reveal where there's this big quest you go through at the very end to find the previous row warden, and then you get to the end and it's heartbreaking, and I was a little bit in tears because I put so much work in, and they had the sad music playing, and I was like, no, I worked so hard. Oh, it was really good. I had to give the game props for that. I feel like the game could be a little bit better if they had a little bit more depth for some of the choices, or I don't know, there's one character I really wanted to say, but they're doomed no matter what you do. But at the same time, like, they had a lot of variety to it, and there's this one factor where you can type in what you're looking for, and I picked like trapdoor in this one area because I was like, oh, why not? And then it led to something, and I was like, oh, wow, I feel so smart for that. And I like that it had a very organic feeling of like kind of detective-based puzzle solving. So that felt really good. I felt like they were acknowledging like the players' like intellect and stuff, if that makes sense.
Hidden exploration can be really fun in games, like discovering areas that are not part of the main story is one of my favorite things to do.
It always feels so good. It's like, oh, they're accounting for like your like intellectual curiosity in that sense.
No, it was definitely one that whenever I seen it, it kind of reminded me of those very text-heavy games, not unlike Disco Elysium, even though there's a lot more to Disco Elysium than
I definitely get that comparison.
But it kind of reminded me, just again, it's from the outside looking in, but there's an old Flash game called A Dark Room. I don't know if you've ever played it.
I've heard of it. I don't think I played it.
But it's text-based, and it just kind of unravels and unravels over time. You start off in a dark room with like literally nothing, and you turn on a light, and it just builds from there. It's very, very, like, it shows my age that I know what that is. But like Road Warden and those kind of text adventures, almost like people used to read books, and that's exactly what they were. Turn to page 63 if you did this, and now
I loved those ones, the Choose Your Own Adventures.
Oh man, that reminds me.
Brilliant.
Reminds me of like middle school and elementary school when they had like those Goosebumps Choose Your Own Adventures.
Yeah,
I love those as a
Give
kid.
Yourself Goosebumps was like brilliant. I had one that was like this creepy circus, and I must have read it 100 times. I loved it.
No, well, in a nutshell, that's what Road Warden was for me, at least on the outside looking in. For my number 5, I have one that is one of the official picks from Game of the Year awards, and that is Cult of the Lamb. And it might be higher on other people's lists. It was definitely one that was a breakout success this year because it was cute, it was whimsical, but it was also really dark and sinister at the same time.
I've watched so many streamers play it. It's like everyone was playing it.
It was a fantastic one for guys to just jump into, and really accessible gameplay. It kind of had that Stardew Valley-esque kind of resource management side of it, but also had the combat aspects that were kind of Hades-like and roguelike-esque as well. Neither of them I thought ever struck a chord to the same level as the other games that they're based on. I think it was kind of a mismatch of lots of things, and it was really good as a package, but nothing ever like truly really hit the mark for me. That like the combat was the main issue. I think the actual cult management side of things was actually a lot more deep, and I found a lot more joy whenever I was actually managing my cult and kind of getting the doctrines in order. But whenever I had to actually go out and crusade runs and I had to actually fight, I just thought the combat just wasn't deep enough. There was some things that made it a little bit more deep when you started to get fleeces, and whenever you could start to kind of change things up a little bit. But ultimately, it just, like, whenever you're comparing something, and I can't help but do it, when you compare something to Hades, which is probably its closest comparison in terms of combat, I'm thinking this really pales in comparison. Like it's nowhere near, which is a really hard thing to do for that game. It's a terrible thing to do because it's never really going to hit those heights. But it was really, really good and really fun, and it doesn't overstay its welcome as well. It's only with you for about 10 to 12 hours, and you've basically finished everything there is to do. The only pitfall in terms of the management side of things was I thought it got very overwhelming at a stage. Like when you get towards the end game, whenever you have maybe 16 to 20, maybe 25 people in your cult, there's far too much to do. Like you have to engage with everyone individually to get your points up and get your inspiration and all of that. And it's just so much. And it's a good thing that the game ends very soon after that, because if it was one of those sandbox games where it's ongoing and goes and goes and goes, I would have hated that. Like it doesn't have that longevity because it would drive you in. But in general, I really enjoyed it. It doesn't sound like I did, but I did.
Yeah.
No, I can understand it being stressful when you got to like manage so many different things. I remember I used to play this online role playing game called Tribal Wars, and when you got good, you would just have like hundreds of villages that you had to like pay attention to every single one, like spending the resources, managing the troops, and when you get to that sort of end stage of a game, it does get really stressful. So I'm glad to hear that Cult of the Lamb doesn't sort of drag that stage out too long, because that kind of thing can take the fun out of a game when it just feels like a grind.
Yeah, I get that. I remember the game, I really invested in a couple of followers, and I didn't realize that they could die of old age, and I was like, wait, no, you're killing I need this person. I sunk so many resources into these like 3 people, and then like one of them left, another one died, and I was like, oh, darn it. But yeah, and then also like
that's the thing that kind of hurts the longevity side of things. You get really attached to your first followers, and you give them individual names, and you project personalities on them, and then by the end you're just like typing on a keyboard randomly. That's your name. Off you go.
Yeah, they felt a lot more dispensable by the end. I was like, oh, I feel less attached to this strange bunny character. Oh.
And then I also had a personal bone to pick with the game, because when it came out on PlayStation, there was a bug for one of the trophies, and it meant I had to sit on 98% for way too long, and it annoyed the life out of me.
Oh no! Are you one of those people who has to get 100% in every game you play?
No, not necessarily, but if I get upwards of 80%, I'm going to finish it.
I'm with you.
What do you think has been the hardest game that you've had to 100% so far?
Ooh.
I did Elden Ring recently.
I saw that.
You 100%ed Elden Ring.
That's marvelous. My gosh.
Fair play. See, I tend to only 100% the really easy games. So like, I usually just go for the ones that, because I'm an Xbox gamer, so I just like to get the 1,000 gamer score on them, and I just go for the ones that I can do it in a couple of hours most of the time, unless it's a game I really enjoy. I guess maybe New Super Lucky's Tale, because most of them are really easy, but there are a couple of achievements that required like really finicky skills. So I know one of them took me a good couple of hours to get, because it literally split-second decisions and everything. So I know it sounds like a kid's game, but there are 2 levels to New Super Lucky's Tale. The first is an accessible game that any age can play, but to get all of the achievements, you need to be really skilled. I promise you, it's not as easy as it looks. I know it makes you sound like you spent 2 hours doing an achievement. It was a tough achievement. Okay, it was really tough.
Well, believe you, it's okay.
Oh man, you earned that.
Yeah, no, it was so I think that's probably the hardest one I've 100%ed. The hardest game that I haven't 100%ed but completed the main quest. It took me 50 hours to do Hollow Knight, because I kept getting lost.
Oh. We're doing the 5-hour speed run. This is why I
don't play Metroidvanias, because I know one of the games you've got on your list, Callum, is a Metroidvania, and I saw that one and I was like, oh, that looks really good, but I can't play them because I love Ori, but I haven't finished either of the Oris because I kept getting lost. The only reason I finished Hollow Knight was I did it on stream, and I had people literally telling me which way to go pretty much the whole way, because I just get lost so easily in Metroidvanias.
Oh, I can sympathize. Yeah, I think eventually, just through pain, you like figure out like, oh, I should not go that way. That way will cause me only grief. And then you like know all the shortcuts by the end. But gosh.
Oh dear.
Well, we'll move on to the number 4s. Do you want to kick off number 4, Melika?
Oh, I was doing them backwards because I gave my number 1 as Beacon Pines. Oops. I can give you my number 4 though. I'll do mine in a random order because I'm crazy. Right. So my number 4 is Power Wash Simulator, which when I first saw, because Power Wash Simulator was added to Game Pass, and the Xbox Game Pass forums were going nuts with, oh my god, you have to play it. Now, I thought this was a meme. I thought this was a joke in the same way as, oh, you got to play Peppa Pig. But Power Wash Simulator is actually way better than it has any right to be. Like, it is not an incredible, whoa, what a masterpiece. It is you can sit there for hours and just let your mind clear itself. It is so relaxing and satisfying because it literally is just as realistic as you can imagine of if you had a power wash business and were going around cleaning dirty places. So there's all sorts of levels. You can clean cars, you can clean houses, playgrounds, there's a skate park, and it's just so satisfying watching the dirt slowly disappear, and it's all done in real time as well. So it's not like, let's condense these levels into 15, 20-minute things. It's like, no, if this would take you 2 hours in real life, it's going to take you 2 hours in the game. You've got all these different nozzles and cleaning fluids, and you just go around spraying your power wash simulator all over, getting that dirt away, and it's brilliant. And some levels are really, really frustrating, especially for the achievements, because you've got different tools and stuff you can use. So you've got like a step ladder, you've even got scaffolding. But one of the achievements is the fire station, and the achievement is to do it without using any scaffolding. Now, there's one really tall tower, and the only way to get that achievement is to climb up to the tower and repeatedly jump off the top, having your power simulator out as you fall down, and just basically do it in lines all the way around by jumping off the top. So that one took me far longer to get than I care to admit. But honestly, it's just so relaxing and satisfying, and the level designs are really different, so it does kind of feel repetitive in the same game, but you've got different elements. For example, the playground, there's loads of different color around it. There's one that I really like because some of them are based on fairy tales and things. So there's one that's kind of it's implied that it's owned by Hansel and Gretel. There's another one from there was an old lady who lived in a shoe, and you've got to clean her shoe that she lives in. So there's just all sorts of funny nods like that. The storytelling is very amusing because you get text messages from your clients as you play through it. And honestly, yeah, it's not, it's not the most mind-blowing game you've ever played. It's not got exciting, fantastic gameplay mechanics, and it's literally just a power wash simulator, but without having to have any muscles to hold a real power washer.
Yeah, that's incredible.
No,
I
completely relate to that because I reviewed Lawn Mowing Simulator this year. It was out in PS5 a bit later and everything else, as most indie games tend to be. And it was the exact same thing. It's just turn your brain off gameplay where you just get your lawnmower out and you cut grass. And that's literally all that you do, and there's nothing else.
That's what you need, because so many games are so intense and you feel so engaged, but they drain you. Whereas with this one, it's just when you've had a busy, tiring day and you just want to take the weight off of your mind and let it zone out for a while. Because I've got like a really busy neurodivergent mind that's always going on and on and on. Whereas with Power Simulator, it switches off. It is just the sound effects of the water, and it's pretty much the only time I can make my brain shut up, and I love it.
Yeah, I haven't gone and played the game, but it kind of reminded me a bit of like the Visceral cleanup studio thing, where you go into like horror games post the outbreak and stuff, and just clean everything up with a mop and whatnot.
I haven't played that one myself, but I saw someone else play it on stream.
Yeah, I don't know. I guess I done some more work for my house with my dad like over the summers, and it kind of, I haven't played the game, but it reminded me a bit of that. I was like, oh, that's just gonna trigger the memories.
No, I mean, all the games like that where you can stick on a podcast and play the game and you don't lose any context on the screen, they're like gold dust. I love them because
absolutely
not enough of them. I recently bought House Flipper, and well, I haven't really got into it as much as Ella, my wife, has, because she started playing it at the same time as me, and to quote her, she said, "This is going to be a big problem."
Oh dear.
It's that same thing, and that one's kind of almost combined with that kind of Sims gameplay where there's a lot of kind of customization and pick your own accessories and decorations, and you can get lost in that for a bit too long. But yeah,
it's really fantastic taking these like really mundane activities or even stuff like bureaucracy and making them really enjoyable. Like stuff like Papers, Please, like turn passport like checking into a fun gameplay mechanic.
It's really amazing how they get these like ideas, because I know when I was reading like an Ask Me Anything they did on Reddit, Future Lab, the developers, and they were saying how they wanted to do an FPS that wasn't violent. So I mean, like technically it is kind of in a first-person shooter style because you've got your nozzle and you're sort of going around getting the dirt. So I think it's just such a really sort of clever take on it.
No, I really, really rate it.
Yeah, there's one. My next game actually, I think my fifth game, I think World War was my third game, but my fifth game was actually Vampire Survivors. So I thought, I don't think it's the most visually impressive game. It's not, but it's one of those time sync games where you can just play it for a very long time. And I love the twist that you're not actually controlling any of the actions for like shooting or anything. That's all passive in the background. You're just trying to dodge the enemy's bullets and everything. So it's a lot of just like picking your synergies and just like trying to focus on dodging. I thought there was enough depth to the gameplay and mechanics between the characters and different abilities you can get. Like that made it very enjoyable. But at the same point, the game was very repetitive. Like it would go on for like 30 minutes at a time for each level, and like more if you kept dying a lot, which I did. And they're like,
no, I remember watching the trailer and thinking, there's so much going on. It's a bullet hell, right?
Yes.
Vampire Survivors. Yeah, I can't be dealing with them. Too much for me.
Yeah, it's at least you can make it easier for yourself. Like if you do well enough, you can buy upgrades beforehand, so it kind of makes it sense to keep going back to it. But at the same time, it is so repetitive that I don't know if I could really put it any higher in the list. But it was like, I feel like it was noteworthy enough to like at least remember it for later. It was a good Halloween game to get at the very least.
Just from the outside looking in, because I'm purely console, I never get to see these things until like they come out 2 years after everyone's had them. Is it kind of like akin to like Call of Duty Zombies? You have to just survive in a room as long as you possibly can.
Yeah, kind of. I mean, I guess in the sense of like you're going around in circles. The idea is it's a giant map that pretty much goes on forever, and I mean, it's not really that intricate that like there is not a lot of detail to the map stuff for some parts. Some parts actually have a little bit more like traps and everything. But yeah, I would say it's a lot of just you're trying to weave your way through like zombies or vampires or plants and whatnot, and that makes it kind of interesting. It's just you feel like they get increasingly closer in some playthroughs, and like the very end is the best part. Is like when you have like you win with just a little bit of health left, and you're like, oh, I just made it. That feels good.
I imagine I would probably, if I was going to get that, I'd have the same hang-ups that I do with Dwarf Romantic, that it doesn't really get any better than it does in the first 5 to 10 minutes that you play that game. That is what it is, and it never gets any more complex.
I would say it gets better like the first few hours in, but after your like 5th or 6th hour, it's pretty much the same. You've experienced most of the gameplay death.
So does PlayStation not have Vampire Survivors, Callum?
No.
Xbox does.
Xbox is a really good place for indie games. Nintendo Switch isn't bad either. PlayStation tends to get things about a year later. We recently got, what was it? 2 months ago we got Inscription, which was nice.
Hey, finally.
This month we got Sable, which I've been waiting for a long time, but it takes ages. That sucks. But a game that we do have, and I put it number 4, was Evil West. And it's a very, very cool game. It's very reminiscent of like old school Fallout games in the way that it's presented, but the combat's very different in the sense that it's much more reactionary and you're actually in the moment rather than a turn-based thing, which 9 times out of 10 will put me off a game because I'm not mad into turn-based stuff. I like to be reactionary. But there's a kind of blend of combat strategy where you can take your time, take a step back, and actually plan things. And sometimes it is just chaotic, shitty, bang, bang, which I also quite enjoy as well. The story's really cool. The character's really cool. Full disclosure, I usually play about 5 hours of games and then have to jump into something I have to review. So that's basically where I am with Evil West. But from what I've seen of it, it's better than it's enough that I want to put it in at number 4 of my list because it is that strong in terms of all its mechanics, all of the things that are put in place. And I really can't wait to see what else it has in store because in terms of like the first couple of hours, it's been fantastic.
No, I confess I hadn't heard of Evil West until you mentioned it, but I totally get what you mean about only playing a few hours. Obviously, I review games a lot as well, and it is this case of I love this, but I need to play something else now. So it's just trying to find the times to play it is just absolutely a nightmare. So I can definitely relate to that. But it means you've got something to look forward to always. I'm always so excited to just carry on with games and just I chop and change between so many at a time because I know some people will just play one game, the same game for like a month, and I'm like, how are you playing the same game? Because I play like 20 games a month. It's just crazy.
To its credit, though, it's one of those games that has like lots of intricate like moving parts, but at the same time, I don't feel that kind of overload of information and that sense of dread when you have to come back to like a AAA game. Like I finished God of War Ragnarok and I want to go and platinum that, but every time I think about it, I'm like, I have to learn how to play that game again. I don't want to do it. So that's the dread of that. But I know that I can jump straight back into Evil West and have a great time with it. And I know that you're like, I know it's on JT's list and he's going to give a much more detailed rendition of why it's fantastic. So I'll maybe end it there.
Oh man, yeah. I for Evil West, I love that comparison, like comparing to the old Fallout games, because I've really tried to play Fallout 1 and 2, but God, the graphics are so dated, it's hard to make sense of what's on the screen. And like I put a couple hours in each one, it's like I just can't tell what I'm looking at right now. But I love all of the like the writing.
Was do you know in Evil West how there's the map system and you go from point to point and along that point you sometimes get random encounters? That was very Fallout, like retro Fallout-esque.
Right. Yeah. No, I love that. I feel like that was a lot more. It made the world feel a lot bigger than it was for a lot of games.
Mm-hmm. Melika, do you want to jump in with your, well, not number 3, but one of them?
My number 5. Let's go for number 5. So my number 5, and I remember you saying you had a very different opinion to me on this, is KO the Kangaroo. Now, I'll be honest, this is pretty much only there because I absolutely love 3D platformers. And so anything that's going to bring me a decent 3D platforming experience automatically has a much better chance than any other game. So for this one, I felt that the movement controls were really smooth. I loved the range of like jump. I say range. There's like there's a few different like mechanics into it. So you can collect. There's like wind powers, ice powers, fire powers. You can like roll to smash things. You can spin around. You can hit them. There's like a special time slowing effect. The jumping is decent. The thing for me with so many 3D platformers mess up is the movement controls. And if the jumping feels clanky in any way, I hate it. Whereas with this, the jumping feels smooth. So for me, anything that's going to give me a 3D platform experience where I can jump without being annoyed at it, automatic. I love it. And I also felt that it really captured that nostalgic feeling of how it was playing, Spyro and Crash and things back in the day. The colors, the cartoony sort of style of the game, the assets, it all really captured what I feel a 3D platformer should be, and it should just be fun. That is the only thing I care about is it fun? I don't care about, is it fancy? Does it look realistic? All I care about is, can I play it for a few hours and have a laugh? And I can. And I will fully acknowledge it has a lot of flaws. There are glitches everywhere. The music will just randomly cut out. The camera sometimes gets stuck inside buildings whilst you're outside of buildings. The voice acting is atrocious. I don't think I've ever heard such bad voice acting consistently across all the different characters. Like you think at least I think there's like one character that was decent and the rest were just all shocking, saying things with the wrong inflections, and it's just like and it's not even like it's the same actor doing the different characters. They've just got a bunch of really bad voice actors, and I feel so bad. If they're listening, I'm sorry. Well, I was going to say it's not you, it's me, but it is you. But I am sorry anyway. But it is. It's one of the games where I kind of just wish they didn't have voice acting and they just had on the screen, which is very rare because usually my complaint is with games I wish they had voice acting, but with this, it's like I wish they didn't have voice acting. But when the music doesn't cut out, the music is actually really good. It's just only there for the first 10 seconds or so before it disappears in a level. But there's also lots of different things to collect, and I love collecting things. And one thing that really sells it for me are the customization options. There's so many different costumes that you can unlock throughout it, and they also over Halloween released a DLC called the Oh Well DLC, which is like there's these short sort of mini games inside it called Wells, which is sort of like 2 or 3 minutes, really intense platforming skills test either your combat or platforming skill things. So they added, I think it was 5 new ones to that, and each one had a unique Halloween costume, so like a skeleton, a zombie, a pumpkin head. And yeah, I just really like being able to customize my character in games. So is it incredible? No. Is it a lot of fun? Yes. Callum, go and shoot the game down.
Well, first of all, I didn't know the game had DLC, and I'm genuinely astounded that they threw more money at that after seeing the full game. So that's a revelation I didn't think I'd have. But in terms of what I thought about it, like a lot of the things that you said that you've overlooked are the things that I just couldn't. The glitches were terrible. There was a particular thing that really pissed me off, and I think that was the point where I decided, no, this isn't for me anymore, was the collectibles within the game, or like the key items that you needed to like access a certain part of a level to like progress.
Yeah.
You couldn't get it unless you had something else, and it soft locked the game. And I was just like, if the game's going to soft lock with such basic stuff, I can't.
Which part did you get soft locked at? Because for me, it was more that it forced you into a linear thing rather than being able to choose it. But I never got soft locked at any point. Maybe you're just not skilled enough to get the items, Callum.
Maybe I'm just not a good enough kangaroo. But like, it just, I don't know why the game was even made. Like, it really struck me as one of those, those THQ Nordic remasters that no one asks for, but inexplicably they get made anyway. Like remasters for like Destroy All Humans or Battle for Bikini Bottom. Like, no one's asking, but we get them anyway. That's what the Kangaroo was for me, because like that is a like a platformer from the 2000s that had very, very modest success.
See, I never played the original ones. Perhaps did you play the original one?
This was based on an actual game.
Yeah, so it was because Yeah, it was like an original KO the Kangaroo, and then this was like the sort of, I think it was completely re-released though. Like it was just the same character but different scenario. Am I right? Like I'm not certain. I never played the original, but I think it was very different.
I had a look at it because I was considering reviewing this game, and I was trying to see if I remembered the plot from the last few games. Like back in the 2000s, the game was very much centered around like poaching and trophy hunting. And, like,
Really?
and I was like, oh well, I can see why they went a different way with that.
Yeah, I was gonna say that's not good. I'm just finding my review of it so I can see what like score I actually gave it, because I know for what it's not that high rated. I wouldn't rate it that highly, even though it's one of those games that I enjoyed more than it deserved to be enjoyed. So this is very much I loved it. Most people probably wouldn't like it as much as me. So I gave it. Oh, actually no, I gave it an 8. Apparently, I did just put my own bias on. It doesn't necessarily deserve an 8, but it's because I weight enjoyment very, very high. Realistically, it probably deserved a 7.2. But I give it an 8 for the fun.
Oh.
Well, there goes all that journalistic integrity, eh?
No. I think the integrity is sticking to what you think rather than what other people think. I think that's where the integrity comes from. I think it's being honest about yourself. And for me, I think fun should be rated more highly than things like not glitching everywhere. It's not there's loads of glitches. It's more there's a few glitches that come up regularly.
Well, yeah, alongside the gameplay, alongside the voice acting, now that you mention it, was genuinely awful.
Let's do this thing!
Oh god, how did they sound? I'm really curious.
Like
about
literally,
this
it's like put loads of different. It was like, let's do this thing. It was like up and down, up and down. It was
extremely cartoonish.
Well, like they tell jokes and then put the emphasis on the wrong word. It was so bad.
The constant swing and a miss. That was bad.
Oh man.
But the gameplay was good. The gameplay was good, and the graphics were also good, and the music was good when it was there, and that is why I. Also, the story was decent. I liked the story. It was cliche and cheesy, but I like cliche and cheesy. It's what you expect.
I mean, like it. For a 3D platformer, like a mascot platformer, I'm not really expecting the story. Anything is a bonus, so I don't really care about that.
I love mascot 3D platformers. They're my jam, and this was a good example of one. And if they just took the time to redo it and take out the glitches, I would genuinely really love it even more. I think the only thing bad for it is that it just needed more development and new voice actors.
A lot more development. I will agree with you there. It's like a second.
It has potential.
It's like a second-rate Ty the Tasmanian Tiger, and I say that with lots of love for Ty the Tasmanian Tiger.
I really thought it was just aping Spyro and Crash Bandicoot. I didn't know it was based on like original game in the 2000s. So I wonder what went through the thought process. Like, oh, let's revive this old IP. And
yeah, I feel like that was just sitting, and the license was about to run out, and they went, "We better do something with this."
Oh.
The old Activision route, they tend to do that. But yeah, do you want to jump in with your JT and get off this Kangaroo topic?
All right. Well. I think you'd also mentioned Cult of the Lamb. I also had Cult of the Lamb on my list as number 4, I think. And yeah, and I thought it was fine. I don't have too much new to add except that I played a lot of Binding of Isaac, and I still think like that's one of the probably the best roguelike I've ever played, just because it has an extreme amount of mechanical depth, and the theme is just it also has a good dark humor where you're fighting your mom most of the time in like this dark underbelly of your like your subconscious and your mind, and it's funny and great. But I just thought the mechanical depth of that game was so much superior to Cult of the Lamb. Like Cult of the Lamb, I feel like I just kept comparing it to the games. Like there's so much stuff that I can't do. Like it has some of the mechanics from this game, but it doesn't have secret rooms, or there isn't like a secret level you can go to. And I was like, oh well. I feel like I wasn't getting as much out of it. But at the same time, the dark humor and the general quirkiness of the game made it so fun to play through for the first couple hours. So, like, I really enjoy like that, the feeling of just going deeper and deeper into the cold. And I was like, oh, how far can we go and how messed up can this get? But after you've unlocked all of the rituals, I felt like, I feel like I've experienced most of the game now. Like, I don't really see the point of finishing.
I heard that they were bringing out like DLC for it. I was like, that doesn't really interest me at all. Like, there's no reason for me to jump back into this game again. There's nothing more it can offer me. And from what it sounds like, the Binding of Isaac was like Hades for me as Binding as it was for you. Like comparing it to a game that it's never going to hit the heights of, but it does some of the stuff quite well.
Yes,
right. Like there's parts like the game had soul hearts in it. I was like, well, the Binding of Isaac had this, and they did a better job of it. So why aren't you doing that too? But yeah.
Whenever things are pre-established, it's better to copy them correctly rather than do a half-arsed job. So.
All right.
Yeah. No, I want to play it, but I don't want to play it enough that I would go out and buy it. If it's added to Game Pass, I will play it, but I'm not gonna. I've just got so many other games that also look good that I'd rather play when I can get them for free. So that's the thing. Like 90% of the games I play are just on Game Pass. So a game has to really strike me to think, yes, I'm willing to pay money for it. So I think that's kind of the thing I look for in a lot of things.
It does seem like one of those games that's going to hit Game Pass in the next few months. It's old enough now that people have kind of lost. I think it needs like a surge of new players that's not going to get anymore. I don't think the DLC did that for it.
No, I'll be very surprised if it never comes to Game Pass, to be honest. I'm just going to wait patiently. For me.
I think the biggest thing the game has going for it is like there's a lot of Twitch interactivity where like the people on Twitch can like influence the chat if there's enough there, and it's like you can actually help or like have like cause detriments for the player and stuff. And I love that you can like make, all right, let's make your game much more difficult. You take twice as much damage now. And I was like, are you kidding me? That sounds hilarious.
I like watching Twitch streams of it. Look really fun.
It's very much one of those like Twitch plays Pokemon sort of things where you can kind of just give it to them and let them do it.
Twitch plays Pokemon was such an iconic thing.
That's hilarious to watch. I've seen some of those, and there's just too many people in chat that the player can't like move around because they're all keep going in circles.
I remember
this is hilarious.
When the very first one launched, we were like 11 hours in the rocket base because they had all these like teleporty pads on the floor and stuff, and it was just we were on Anarchy because they had it where like if someone pressed something it does automatically. We did not make any progress until we finally moved over to democracy, but it was just it was awful, but in the best way possible. I think it takes a month to beat it.
Not sure. You can pick that up every now and again and look at it, and it's fantastic. But yeah, I'll move on to my number 3, and it's one that it's very, very new. Came out. It only actually released on console 2nd of December, and it was out a couple of days before on PC because there was like some sort of bug they wanted to fix. But it's called The Night Witch, and it is a Metroidvania title. Team 17 produced it. I think it was Super Mega Team was the developer on it. The reason why I say that is because Team 17 have produced so much this year. Like I've been following it just passively because I've noticed that there's been a huge uptick in terms of what they're doing. They're trying to move into the AA field, and they're shedding that indie bracket that I think they've had with their
I think I've played like 3 new Team 17s this year. There's a lot of them.
Yeah, they have a lot of content coming out.
Well, they had one this month that I reviewed, which was Ship of Fools, and then a couple of months before it was like Before We Leave, and I can't remember what the other one was, but yeah, I played quite a few from Team 17 this year. They really do seem to be ramping it up. I agree.
I remember I played Honey, I Joined a Cult, which is a lot of it was just like Cult of the Lamb pretty much, but expanded the base building elements, and it was good. At the very end, it was just a cash grind. Yeah, they have a lot of games out.
But what I've noticed from all the games that came out under the Team 17 bracket is they have been largely underwhelming to fine. Like none of them have really excelled. And I think they're just throwing a lot at the wall to see what sticks.
Yeah,
which is fine. I get that, but this is the one of them that was actually good. And there's so many things going for it. It's kind of like a bullet hell Metroidvania in a lot of ways because what essentially how it gets away from the standard Metroidvania is you're completely off the ground, so you're not like kind of boots on the ground like most Metroidvania. You are like flying. You're constantly in the air because you're a night witch and they can fly. So you're actually moving in a 2D world, but you're kind of floating the whole way through. And it does a lot of the same things that a Metroidvania will do, but it's really well written. The music is really good. The navigation is pretty easy for the most part because, like yourself, I do get lost very easily in a Metroidvania game. That one is not bad at all.
How easy are we talking?
Accessible. Like there's bits that you potentially get lost. It depends how interested you are in actually getting all the stuff. As well as that, it's very much in the same bracket as Hollow Knight because from the outset, like you're probably looking at thinking, this is a very childish kind of kiddie-looking game. It's actually really hard, like really hard.
I went into Hollow Knight thinking, oh, this looks like a cute, fun, cartoony game. This will be nice and easy. And then it took me 8 hours to beat Hornet the second time, and it was like, oh my god, this is. I remember the very first boss I came on to me just under an hour, and that was like the most I'd ever spent in any boss in any game, and that was the shortest time it took me for any of the bosses. I was so unprepared. It was deceptively hard. It looked like it was going to be so easy, and I remember actually seeing the Night Witch and thinking, oh, that looks cute. If I didn't get lost, that would be easy. So you're saying that's not the case with the combat then?
No, the combat is really, really, it's tough, and it's also very rewarding. It's kind of on that. Apart from the very start of the game where there's a huge difficulty spike right at the start for some reason, after that it's fine, and you gradually progress. And there's, in terms of the combat, there's two things that is really cool about it. One is in terms of like you firing the bullets, it's like a typical twin stick shooter. But one thing they do, which is really, really cool in terms of accessibility, is they have an auto lock feature which auto fires. So if you hold down like the shoot button, but you're not using the twin stick, you're just kind of flying around and dodging, it will lock on to the closest enemy and fire. So if someone doesn't have the same kind of motor skills that you do, they can potentially play the game, which I thought was fantastic. Like, you don't see that very often from a twin stick shooter. And then secondly, in terms of the combat, there is a card deck element to the game. And usually whenever I hear that about a game, I go, I'm not going to play that. But with this one, they've implemented it in such a way that it really blends with the combat. I mean, it's like a secondary thing. I kind of compare it to Back to Blood, which kind of made a huge thing about their deck building thing. Like, oh, I know it's Left 4 Dead, but we're going to put cards in it now. And I was like, oh, you shouldn't do that. But
I love cards in a game. I love it.
Always on the fence.
Well, they are becoming much, much more popular. But maybe if you take a step back a couple of years, no one wanted cards in the game. And I'm still very hurt by Chain of Memories, Kingdom Hearts. That was just very hard to get my head around. Did not enjoy that. And that ruined card games for me for the most part.
Oh god, I'm running a timeline of the Kingdom Hearts series, and it's challenging. There's so much depth to it. Sorry, going back to the game. I'm thinking about that right now.
But yeah, like there's games like Slay the Spire and stuff that have kind of brought me around. So I'm in that bracket where I can accept a card thing if it's there. And with the Night Witch, it's very much well implemented, very well done. There's just so many things going for the game. It's a real surprise package. Like I didn't expect myself to enjoy it that much, but it's just so
I love when games give you that sort of unexpectedness.
Yeah, I've got to ask for that. And my favorite part of Hollow Knight actually was just like the exploring the world, because I felt like it just kept going, and I'm just so surprised. Like, I can keep going down, or I can keep going out. And how is exploration for that game? Is it like, does it have a lot to it, or is it more focused on like the gameplay mechanics?
Because it's a lot more narrative driven than most Metroidvania games are, so it means that the areas are much more compact, and there's a much more linear feel to the places that you go. It's less exploration based. You do return to places with new powers, and you can access new areas, but the way that they combat that is, in the smaller areas you have ambushes and you have boss incoming. That just, it comes up with a huge thing on screen, it's boss time or something to that effect, or ambush, and then a boss comes in, and that happens pretty regularly. So that's how they make it's a really beautiful game. The scenery is fantastic, but it's not one that you'll explore for hours and hours. You just kind of get through the bosses, get through that section, on to the next.
Okay. Yeah, just curious about that. I think for my first Hollow Knight playthrough, I ended up spending like 120 hours, like exploring every single detail, and then finally beating the Pantheon Polonist. And that was a lot. But yeah, I think if like the gameplay is really fine tuned, that makes the game much more enjoyable for that.
Yeah, well, Melika, do you want to jump in with another one?
Yeah, let's give you my number 3. So my number 3 is Tinykin. Now, this one I played because the thumbnail for it looked like it's going to be like really cartoony. And then weirdly, the art style in the game is nothing like the art style in the thumbnail. But the game is really good. I thought I'd like it because it looked just cute, but I thought it would be like an average game, and it was so much better than I was expecting. So this is kind of like another 3D platform with very sort of different style to it. Apparently it's kind of like Pikmin, but I've never played Pikmin, so I don't know. But what it's got these kind of like tiny little helpers called Tinykin, and you discover them as you sort of navigate your way through these levels. And essentially there's loads of different colors that do different things. So you've got red ones that explode, pink ones that pick things up, you've got green ones that sort of tower up so you can climb to higher areas. And just interacting with them and collecting them throughout the levels, it's almost like solving a puzzle as you explore to get to the new areas. There's so many different quests that you have to complete to unlock new areas. You have to find and unlock new characters. And one thing that I really like about it is that the levels are set like in regular sort of human areas, but you're really shrunk down. So there's one that's like a bedroom, one that's like a playroom, and one that's like a sort of terrarium with plants and things. And it's so clever to sort of see regular everyday items from a completely different perspective. So there's like a Lego brick that's like twice the size of you and stuff. It's just really clever the way that it all interacts together, and the storyline is really well woven throughout it all. There's a story of like because the other characters that aren't you are kind of like bugs, and they all worship this sort of like supposed god and stuff. And I'm not going to say the spoiler for it, but the twist at the end is really clever, how it all comes together and links everything. And just every sort of aspect of the game is really well designed, and the developers clearly thought everything's through. They haven't tried to do too much, which I find can often be a case, especially with sort of these let's have loads of different mechanic kind of games. You can often do too much and it just gets away from itself. With this one, it's really contained, really well executed. There's multiple ways to solve the different puzzles depending on your personal play style, which I really like as well. I don't like when the game forces you to go at it from one angle. I like when it's like you could do this, or if you prefer to use this kind of like I'm much more of like a sort of cautious player. I like using my mind in these kind of things rather than really technical platforming skills, because even though I can do the platforming, I find it more fun to engage my mind in these things. And that's what I really liked. You know, I could solve a puzzle either by carrying something to this location, or I could use electronics to activate this part of it. It was just really sort of clever the way that it all interacted. I thought it was really cute, which again, cute and fun are my number two top things that I look for in any game. It's like, is it cute? Is it fun? I'm playing it. I don't care about the technical aspects, how fancy it is. It's why I don't play games like Elden Ring and stuff. It's like, they look incredible, amazing. That's not cute. That's scary. I'm out of here. So for me, Tinykin was a really fun experience that just offered so much. All the different levels had a completely different theme to them. And I think the whole game was about 8 or 10 hours long. So it was just a nice sort of decent length to get full enjoyment out of it without it dragging on too long. And I would fully recommend it to anyone.
Well, first of all, in Elden Ring, the urns are very cute. I will say that they're very cute. I will defend them.
I mean, they're still trying to kill you, but
they are. They're still trying to murder you, but they're lovely. But getting back to Tinykin, it's one that I've actually purchased for myself, and I haven't got around to. It's on the backlog, as is like $100 games, but it will be played. And from what you said there, it did immediately like Pikmin. That's exactly what it sounds
like. Yeah, so I never played the original Pikmin, so that's why but like everyone was sort of saying who'd been playing it, they're saying, oh, this is so like Pikmin. So apparently I'd probably enjoy Pikmin because I loved Tinykin. Also, I've googled the urns, and they are not cute. They're just urns with arms, dude.
Whatever. The other thing with about Pikmin compared to Tinykin, and it's only because I played Pikmin and I haven't played Tinykin, and it was the original Pikmin on GameCube, and maybe that it's a problem that comes with the age of the game, but it wasn't a very emergent game in the sense that it was a puzzle game. There was a correct answer for every puzzle, and you done it in a certain way. It's nice to hear that whenever you play Tinykin, there was a certain level of emergence to it, and you can do whatever you want to get through there.
Yeah, definitely. You can choose which order to sort of put puzzles in as well, so that the game's not forcing you to solve them in any particular order. It's like, you need to do these 3 puzzles to get to the next area. But actually, no, it's not even these 3. You need to do 3 of these 5 puzzles to get to the next area. So you can choose which ones you do, and then you can choose, right, do I prioritize unlocking the Tinykin, or do I prioritize getting through to the next area? And each area you have to, because the Tinykin won't leave the area they're found in. So every sort of new level you unlock, you have to sort of start again in terms of collecting them. And it means you can choose different play styles for different levels, rather than having to decide earlier on, right, I guess I'm going with the pink Tinykins or whatever. You can sort of decide anew for each level, and I really sort of like that aspect of it. And the achievements are relatively easy to get as well. So I'm pretty sure I 100%ed this one in about 1 or 2 hours longer than the main game. So a lot of them, I like when the achievements are collected as part of the natural progression, and then there's only a few extra ones. And that was very much the case here. Like most of them you will get throughout playing normally, and then you can go back and collect the ones for like getting all the relics, getting all the bubbles or whatever. So yeah, there's really good aspects to this game, and you can upgrade certain skills as well, which I also really like. It feels very rewarding that yes, I've collected X amount of things and now I'm getting a physical buff to make the game easier. I like when games don't just give you everything straight off. I like earning it as you go through, and that was another thing that was present in Tinykin.
Excellent. I've never played Pikmin, but it always seems kind of interesting just being able to manage all these little critters. And as you're saying, like being able to have different like ways to solve puzzles like that. I always love that because it makes me feel really smart when I do something like that's not the intended way.
I love that when you do something, it's like, aha, this could work. It's such a great feeling, definitely.
There's only 2 ways that people seem to go with it. It's either Pikmin or Lemmings. It's either one or the other, and they're always going to go one of 2 ways. It's cool. It's definitely cool. Number 2 for you, JT?
Number 2 was a game that you recommended, Callum, called Potion Permit. Yeah, you'd reviewed it, and I thought it sounded interesting, and also I love Stardew Valley, but I played way too much of Stardew Valley, so I had to play something else that was like that instead. And I ended up liking it a little bit more than Stardew Valley in some ways. But yeah, so for
high praise.
Yeah, for those of you that don't know, Potion Permit is like a mix between Stardew Valley and like a Dr. Sim game, kind of like Pathologic, but like minus all of the horror and walking sim. Actually, no, it's still a walking sim, but minus all of the horror elements of that game. And yeah, there's a ton of mini games in it, from like puzzle solving like Tetris, Dance Dance Revolution, and a couple other games that gave me extreme anxiety. There's this one sorting game where you have to like put a bottle in the like that's the right color on the right side or the left side, and that caused me extreme terror. But it was honestly, they had so many features that streamlined the game, where like you could fast travel in the game almost instantaneously if you've been there before, or you could have your dog track down a person, and that was so nice because for so many times
you have a pet dog?
You have a pet dog, and they can track down whoever you're looking for if you can't find them. And so many times in Stardew Valley, I had to hunt them down to find the present.
It's so frustrating in Stardew Valley. Because I really wanted to play Potion Permit. It's one that I've got my eye on. But again, it's one that's like, I don't like buying games unless I have to. So I'm giving it a few months to see if it gets on Game Pass. And if it doesn't, then I'll probably go out and buy it eventually. But for now, I'm being patient. But it's amazing. I'm glad to see it. It lives up in the hype.
Yeah, no, I ended up loving it so much. I haven't even finished it yet, but oh gosh, that echo could be a little bit bothersome. But yeah, no, I really loved just how many ways I felt like they looked at Stardew Valley. They thought like, okay, these are all the things that I was annoyed with in this game. Let's get rid of that, or let's do something to like bypass that. And that felt like, I like it when there was like enough introspection. Let's not like make this game completely like this. Let's make it a little bit more different. And yeah, I love that so much. Also, the characters were fun too, and the visual style was really impressive.
In a sea of games where they're coming out as kind of farming management sims, like your Dinkums and your Coral Islands, and all of these are just trying to be Stardew Valley. I was really happy that this game tried to at least be something different. Like, there's clear comparisons. It's
are there romance options in Potion Permit?
There are. They're terrible. Like, it's not something that you really want to pursue in the game. It's not. It's fine. It's okay.
Don't tell me what I want to do in a game, Callum.
I think I was annoyed about it because kind of for the same reason in Stardew Valley. Like, I eventually got over it in Stardew Valley, but the one person I was like, right, there's romance options. I like you. I'm going to hang about with you and up all of your like relationship things. And they were like, oh, it's not a romance option. I was like, crap.
Who did you want to be with in Stardew Valley?
Robin.
I knew you were going to say Robin. I knew it. Literally everyone wants to be with Robin. Oh, dear.
Or are you going to steal her from Demetrius, Callum?
She did so much better than Demetrius, to be fair. He's not a good husband.
He's a little bit stale, unfortunately.
I hate how he treats Sebastian. It's like, you've chosen to be a stepdad, be a stepdad, Demetrius.
Yeah.
Oh man.
We're getting into starting politics here. But yeah, the potion firm is really, really good. And like the thing that I said about it more than anything else was it succeeds because it tries to be simple in every single aspect of it. It doesn't overcomplicate anything. All of the mini games, like I think a lot of people compared it to Rune Factory in the sense that it just throws a lot of mini games at you, which are they don't reinvent the wheel. Like you said, Dance Dance Revolution, sort from left to right, like button mash in some cases. Like they're all really simple things, but because they're simple, it makes it really accessible for just about anybody to do.
I really like when games don't go overboard, so I'm glad to hear that it sort of sticks to what it's good at.
The only thing I wasn't mad about was the combat. I thought it was a bit weak. But in comparison to everything else, I think they probably could have went a wee bit more on that. But there's so many good bits to it. Like I really, really love the alchemy side of it, which kind of it plays out like kind of a game of Tetris, where you collect things that are forage and they represent an X amount of squares in a certain color, and you have to form the potions with the right shape and the right amount of colors, and it's very, very good.
Yeah, that
very
actually,
clever. But
That
I ended
sounds
up
fun.
loving that. Like, I didn't think I'd like it so much, but there were so many times where like I was so stumped, and I was like, okay, can I make this fit? And eventually the game saying like, no, you should go out and like find that special bear claw or basil leaf. But like I liked when I was able to figure it out, like despite my limited resources. That made me feel really smart, and I like when games reward you for that. That hasn't been apparent so far.
It's been very sometimes the game is like, no, you need to go get an item. I'm like, no, I'll make it fit.
Yeah.
Oh, love that stubbornness.
I'll move on to my number two, and my number two is Rollerdrome. Rollerdrome is a very action-packed, extreme high-octane roller skating game. Basically, it plays out. It's basically roller skating meets like deathmatch, meets Hunger Games, whatever you want it to be. Basically, you play as Kara Hassan, who is like a newcomer to this deathmatch where you kind of scoot about on your fruit bitters and you have a fun time with a set of guns, and you get more guns as you go along. And the idea is basically to go into the ring, do tricks to get your multiplier up, also to kill people to get your multiplier up. You also have to do it in like very, very precise times, and you have to do very, very precise dodges. And there's a lot of different enemies that kind of pop up, and they get worse and worse as time goes on. And it starts off quite hard, and it only gets harder as time goes on. And to actually just get through the game is actually an achievement in itself, because to pick myself up a little bit, like I got relatively good at it, and I was starting to get good scores. And then I looked at like there's an online leaderboard, and I was in like the top 2,000 in the world, and I was like,
hey, that's not bad.
Hey.
Like I was like,
fair play, Callum.
But like I didn't feel like I was doing anything like crazy. It's about getting the multiplier as quick as possible, but also extending them out by doing tricks, but not losing it. So you have to kill someone within that limit, and it's.
So is it one
at the same time you're dodging like a million bullets? Pardon?
Is it one of those games where you're constantly on the move and can't stop, or is it you like stopping and choosing things?
If you stop, you're done. If you stop, you're not. You're gonna die very quickly.
Gotcha.
So would you
it's
describe
very in terms of its like arcade style to Tony Hawk's in a lot of ways, because you go up ramps and you do a lot of like in the air tricks, and it's very, very similar. I don't know what I would compare it to in terms of like the FPS side of it. It's just like a third person shooter, and a lot of it auto locks anyway, so there's not a lot of thought that goes into that side of it. There's one gun you have to self aim, and I never used it because it sucks. But it's a very, very fun game. It's your typical arcade high score, and you're just constantly chasing yourself, and it's a lot of fun. And surprisingly, the story is actually pretty good. It's very minimalistic in its design, in the sense that if you don't want to engage with the story at all, you don't have to. Like, you'll start off in the locker room before the event, and if you want to just bomb ahead and go out the door and go straight in, you can. But you can engage with all of the like materials around and find out about the competitors that you're going against. And there's like a little subplot to sabotage you and all this going on. So it's pretty cool, but it doesn't get in the way of what the game wants to do, and the game relies very heavily on its gameplay. So that's probably the best way.
The only roller skating game I have ever played was Barbie Super Sports when I was a little girl, and you had snowboarding and you had inline skating. You'd go around collecting the letters of, I think it was Barbie that you had to collect the letters of. Just like jump over fountains and stuff, and you could collect money, which could be used to buy different color like tops and skates and things. It was very fun. I only had like a few games at that time as well, so I used to play that one a lot. But I didn't have a memory card, so I just played the first couple of levels over and over and over again. But yeah, that's the only skating I've ever done was Barbie Super Sports.
And how many people did you kill when you played that?
Surprisingly, I think it was 0, actually, if I'm being honest with you, Callum. I'm pretty sure there was no murder in Barbie Super Sports.
Oh, man. All right, I really wanted to ask, have you played Ultra Kill, Callum? Because, like, the way you're describing the game and, like, from what I've seen, it kind of reminds me of that a little bit, just in terms of, like, moving around so fast and, like, the high-octane violence and action.
No, it's completely over my head. Never played it, but I'll take your word for it.
Okay.
And if it's like Roller I want to get on that.
Yeah, no, it's really good. It's one of those, again, kind of arena arcade shooter games, and you play as like a robot who's descending into hell because all of humanity's dead, and this like robots feed on blood apparently, and you're going to hell, and you're gonna empty it out and kill the demons, and that's it. And it's kind of grim and horrible, but it's also really fun too. But yeah. Anyway, I don't know. The way you're describing it made me think of that game. So yeah, I don't know if you might want to check it out. That might be fun, but. Also, I think it's missing the skating element. Actually, no, it has skating. Sorry, that's wrong. You can skate on your feet a little bit, so that's cool.
No, the fact that it combined the Tony Hawk's Pro Skater sort of vibe with this FPS was that was the thing that got it for me. It was like a hybrid of the two. I'd never seen anything like that before, and because I'm relatively good at Tony Hawk's, I think that's what made me relatively good at this one. All I had to do was learn how to shoot in time very precisely, and then I was good to go. So that was good. The button bindings are really weird to get used to initially, but once you get past that, like it's an awesome game. If you like those arcade-heavy skating games, then this is right up your alley, and you get to shoot people too. Fun.
Okay, I have to know, what's the narrative reason for why you're shooting people like in the skating ring?
Because it's a deathmatch where like it's like a World Cup in this world, in this dystopian world, kind of like the Hunger Games, but in Hunger Games they fight for their freedom essentially. What they're fighting for is fame and cash prizes and whatever, but it's the same kind of idea. You go into the quarterfinals and the semifinals, and you just kill all the people that come, and then you become like the head honcho. But the people that you fight against aren't like other competitors. They're they call them house players, which are essentially like the stock enemies that they fill the arena with. But then the people that you're actually trying to compete against are like people like you, who are like the one against millions. The narrative side of it, like you don't want to stare too closely at it because it probably will fall to pieces. But it is relatively good.
Does it have online multiplayer?
It doesn't have online multiplayer. It has like it's completely single player in the sense that you are battling against other people, but it has that online presence in terms of like you can be on the leaderboards and try and beat other people, and that's ultimately all you're trying to do in that game.
But you can't kill other people, not real ones.
That would add like an extra layer of chaos.
Battle Royale. A roller skating doom.
You can't end people with your sick moves.
Yeah, that's it. Doing backflips and shooting folk. Like, that's so fun. We're into our last lip. Melika, do you want to go?
Yeah, so like I said, Beacon Pines was my number 1, but my number 2, and it was pretty close, was Tunic. Now, I am so glad that that's being recognized at the official Game Awards because it absolutely deserves it. And I have such a long history with this game because I remember when it was first announced, it was just years ago. And I remember seeing it thinking, oh my God, that looks so cute. And I put it on my birthday list. I just assumed it would be like released basically soon by the time my birthday came around, but it wasn't. And then the next year, it was still on my birthday list, and it still wasn't released. And then in 2019, I went to Xbox Fan Fest, the official one, and they had a demo of it you could play when you were there. And I played it, and I felt even more in love with it than I already was. It was just absolutely beautiful. And then after another 3 years of waiting, I finally got to play the full version of it when it was released back in March this year. And it was just like, I just waited so long for this, and I was so happy to dive back into it after all the demos and everything they'd released. And it's kind of like almost like Legend of Zelda, but you play as this cute little tiny fox, and you just navigate through this. I think they use like an isometric style of art. You navigate through the world, and it's all just so whimsical and beautiful. And you've got this little sword. It started off with like a little stick, and then you upgrade it to a sword, and there's loads of different other weapons you can get. You can like roll past things, you earn different skills, you collect keys and unlock new areas. But one of the things that I absolutely love about this game, I've never seen in any sort of thing, is the accessibility options for Tunic. Just blow other things out of the water. Like other games always making excuses about why they can't do X, Y, Z to make it more accessible to disabled players. And Tunic are like, nah, you absolutely can, without sort of damaging it for other players in any way. So if you want to play it with a normal level of difficulty, you can just play it. But then what you can also do, you have options. You can set it so you take half damage. You can also have another option where you set so you can, if once you get down to 1 HP, you just don't die. You can set it so that you have unlimited stamina, etc. So you can customize it to yourself. So if you want to lower that difficulty so that you don't die, or so that you can just run around everywhere without having to wait for it to recharge, it's all just there, and it's just absolutely amazing. So it means that the game isn't, out of reach for players who don't necessarily have that skill, especially because it is so cute. It means that younger children will be able to play it, or it means that people are playing with those the disabled pads. So if you've only got like one hand, for example, they would still be able to play it. And so it's just such a simple idea of just let's just cap the damage. Like I don't see why any other game couldn't do that. Just like instead of when HP reaches 0, you die. When HP reaches 0, just continue on as normal. It's such a simple thing you could add to games, and I think it's definitely something that other developers should be striving for, and hopefully that Tunic will pave the way for, is just making your game accessible for all levels of skill so that everyone can have an incredible experience from it. Because and another thing that's amazing about it is it's all designed by one single dude, Andrew Sholdist. Like everything aspect of the game is just one guy, and there's so much lore and everything to it. It's just you collect it as you go through the game. And again, I won't give spoilers for people who haven't played it, but it really is a lot deeper. And there's no spoken word, so it's accessible to anyone in any sort of language because it's all done through like pictures and symbols, and it's just so beautiful. I absolutely love Tunic. It's such an experience. Like when you get into it, the music and everything just sort of brings you into that world. And when you stop playing it, it's almost like a shock to the system. Like, oh, I live in the real world, I guess, because it is one of those games that really just you lose yourself in it for a few hours. It completely captivates you, and it was so worth the wait. I absolutely adore Tunic.
I love the fact that you've brought up the accessibility and how they do all those things, because I've always said that if you're an indie developer, like I get if you can't put a lot of effort into it because obviously resources and you have to get the game out the door. But I think it is a cop-out to say that you can do nothing in most cases, and to kind of bring up Team 17 again. They've done a very good job with the Night Witch, like I mentioned, but the one that you mentioned earlier, Ship of Fools, I went into the options menu just to see what they had.
Yeah,
it genuinely made me sick that the only thing that was in that entire options menu was camera shake on. Like,
yeah, it was ridiculous. Because the thing is, because Ship of Fools can be played either single player or with two of you. I didn't have a player too. I couldn't progress past a certain point, so it was too difficult. And it was like, why were you not any difficulty options? Why is this not a thing? It would be so much easier to say, like, enemies do half damage or something. Like, oh, it's so frustrating.
And the text boxes are tiny. I'd like,
yeah.
But no. Yes, that's another thing Tunic offers. You can change the text size, you can change the text speed. There's so much that you can sort of do for. I say text. Like I said, it's just symbols. But it's the thing is, there's so many sort of aspects of it that you can customize the accessibility for it. Like it doesn't just. I think when you open the accessibility menu, there's like 10 or so different things that you can sort of toggle to make it just right for your level of play. And I only put the sort of like no death on, just sort of test it out to see, I wonder what it's like for people who do it. But I had so much fun with it. I was like, you know what? Yes, it's not as challenging, but it's so much more fun. So I played it on the sort of really easy mode, and I loved it that way because I didn't have to worry about dying to the really tough enemies. I just kept on fighting my way through them and was able to enjoy the story and gameplay more like that. And I think a lot of people who usually play on regular levels would be surprised by how fun it is actually to just play on the easy level of difficulty. And I think having those options for everyone means that everyone can enjoy them. Like, it's not just the people who need the accessibility options who would get enjoyment from it. Like, everyone would.
Yeah. No, I'm definitely an advocate for that, because I mean, because I review games so often, I have to play them on the easy difficulty just to get through them for the most part. But unless it is a game that was like touted as, oh, it's a hard game, you have to play on hard to get the full experience, then fine, maybe I'll do it. But ultimately, I will play it on the easiest difficulty and go through it. And it's always a much more fun time, because you're not pushing, like, batting your head up against the wall every time just to get through something. You're just enjoying it and seeing it for what it is. But in terms of Tunic itself, it's not something that I've played yet. And it's something I may get around to, but I was kind of put off, and I was put off by the fact of how, it's not that I didn't enjoy it, but I wasn't blown away by Death's Door. And I know that that's very, very similar to what Tunic does. And in general, I'm not a big fan of those top-down Zelda games. They're not really my thing. So I imagine Tunic might get a bit lost on me. Would you say that's true?
What I will say is that I played about an hour of Death's Door and thought it was all right, but I didn't love it very much. I would say it felt like a very different playing experience when I was playing Tunic. Like, it didn't. It's really hard to put into words, but like, I would say I wouldn't judge it by how you felt about Death's Door, because they do feel very different when you're in there, when you're playing it, because like I said, with Tunic, everything sort of wraps it to create an experience. Like, everything, the graphics, the music, the gameplay, the smoothness of it, it's all very sort of catered to one well-rounded experience. And I do think that feeling that it gives you is part of why it's so enjoyable. Like, it just feels so pleasant and enjoyable to play in a completely different, like, the aesthetics of it is completely different to Death's Door. And that for me is sort of part of why I guess it felt so different to play. So, and this isn't saying that Death's Door is bad. This wasn't completely my thing. Whereas Tunic, I really, really enjoyed it. And I felt that it definitely offered a different experience. So I would say, do still give it a go. Don't just say, I didn't enjoy Death's Door, so I won't enjoy Tunic, because they are very different when you're actually in the moment.
Okay, I'm sold.
Yeah, no, I thought Tunic, I haven't played it yet. It looks really gorgeous. I'm just afraid it's going to take a little bit more brain power to understand, because I'll have to memorize what all the symbols mean and all that. But,
you don't, that's the thing. You don't actually have to memorize them. Because that's what I felt at first. I was like, oh my God, it's overwhelming. But the thing is, you kind of only need to know a few basic things, and the rest is very intuitive, I would say, with Tunic. Another thing that I really like about it. So although you can't necessarily know what something says, but if you've played like lots of similar games in the past, or even just a few similar games in the past, okay, A is probably going to do this. If I interact with this is probably going to happen. So that's one thing I like about Tunic, is it is very intuitive to get into. So even though the symbols can be a bit overwhelming at first, you don't technically need to know what it says. You can just kind of guess and just hit the enemies, etc.
Okay, I like that. And as you mentioned, it's a lot more accessible too, which I love that, because I do love like challenging games like Dark Souls and all the FromSoft titles, to be honest. But at the same time, it can be exhausting. You want to know, like, okay, what happens next? I don't want to spend another 2 hours fighting the same boss. So yeah, I like that. And also, Callum mentioned, like, as when you're reviewing games, and it's like, okay, I need to get past this game so I can like finish my day. I like that's an option for people.
It's definitely on my to-do list for next year, is set aside like maybe like a game a month just to go, you're going to play that, and even if you have crap to do, you're playing it anyway. And we'll see how we go. I don't know how successful that will be. But yeah, we'll jump into your one, JT. Are we heading back to Evil West?
Oh, okay. Actually, sorry. For my top one was actually Weird West, which I know it's kind of similar. There's a lot of games. There's also like Hard West 2 that came out this year. So there's a lot of games that like had West at the end of the name.
Oh, whenever I was saying about mine, did I say Evil West the entire time?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm talking about Weird West.
Oh, you're talking about Weird West. Oh, okay.
Dear.
Well,
yeah.
Oh God. Well, that kind of changes how I thought Evil West was this entirely different game, but
Yeah, I think there is a game called Evil West, because I remember looking up your
yeah,
list,
no, it just
Callum.
came out. I was like, oh, that must be a good game. It didn't get very good reviews, but I guess there's some hidden gem to it. But yeah, okay, I get what you were saying about it being like more of a Fallout-y kind of game.
Mm-hmm.
For me, I love that the combat felt really cathartic. Like, there's some characters, like, they have a special ability that can turn into a werewolf, or one was this bullet time action that happened in it, and that it felt so good to use in combat. But I think the thing that really sold me on Weird West was there's about 5 story arcs in the game, and the second arc is the Pigman arc, and I just fell in love with like how funny and horrific it was. Like there's just like the ending of the arc is so good, and you run into this character called Pigman Joe, which is this man turned into a pig, like creature humanoid thing, and he's forced to forever speak in rhymes, and it is just the best. I just love hearing him talk, and like he when you finally cure his disease or his like the thing that's forcing him to rhyme, he's about to end his rhyme on like a very raunchy note, and then he ends it very like peacefully, and I'm like, oh yeah, we did it, we saved Pigman Joe. I'm just so good. I was so happy at that point that even though I didn't enjoy the rest of the game, I've just like I felt so good thinking about that. And there were some other good story beats in it too. I just think that story wise you're gonna be a little disappointed at the end, but there are definitely some good highlights in it that make it worthwhile.
No, well, that's what I was saying. That's whenever I was talking about the wrong game. For the first couple hours that I have played, like the story has been really strong. Like it's drawn me in to this world that they've created, and it's hard to do that with an indie game. But the isometric games tend to do it better than most, and it's kind of it's isometric, but it's also a little bit different from your typical isometric RPG because it's a lot more reactive. Like I said, there's a lot more combat involved than say Disco Elysium or Wasteland or whatever you want.
Right.
But it's a very, very strong game narratively to the point that I've played, and it's a bit of a shame. I'm going to find out it's going to drop off, but I'll stop.
Oh, I'm so sorry to spoil that for you, Callum. Oh, but I haven't really told you that. It was disappointing for me, but maybe you'll enjoy it. I don't know. I feel like it was so strong in some points that kind of that I was so pleased for that. Then like it didn't captivate me as much later. It was a little bit disappointing that it wasn't as good. It was so interesting though. Yeah, sorry. I think I thought you were talking about this completely different game that I recently.
Yes, I thought you were talking about the Evil West as well.
Yeah, God bless the people that watch this because they're going to be very confused at that stage. The stage on here don't know what's going on.
Oh dear.
I'll wrap things up with my number one, and it's very much to type this one. There's a game that came out. It's been on early access for a good few years. Been waiting for it to come to console. It's called Session. If anyone's played like a modern day skating game, then you'll know like your Skate 2, Skate 3, Skater XL as well, and to an extent Ollie Ollie World, but very, very different. But Session is very much a skateboarding game made for skateboarders rather than casual players and arcade style players. Like it's not Tony Hawk's, it's not even Skate, because those games kind of camp it up a little bit in terms of what you can do, and that's just because games are meant to be fun and everything. But this is very much an acquired taste in the sense
because you skateboard quite a lot in real life, don't you, Callum?
Yeah. So I took it back on about a year and a half ago, and I'm a lot better than I was when I was a teen, so I'm doing okay. But because of those things, I can appreciate the very, very intricate details that this game goes into. Like I could talk shop about it for hours on end. It's essentially what this game does is it's hyper realism in the world of skateboarding. So whereas Skate will have you like flick the sticks and you'll do a trick, and there's not a lot of thought to it. Like there is a certain move will do a certain thing. With Session, you can make it as difficult as you want. Like the base level is pretty difficult, but you can get to a point where it's like, why would you do this? In the sense that you can put on auto catch so that whenever you do a trick, you then have to do the trick and then catch it at the exact time that the board flips, so that you basically put your foot back on. You can make sure that like you have to lock in your grinds. So instead of just hopping up onto the ledge and you lock in, you have to get the angle just right, and then when you're in the air you have to maneuver your feet so that you lock the trucks in, and then you have to like wedge the trucks in so that they stay on and you don't slip out. Like there is so much detail, and there's like tricks included in the game that I didn't think that like games would be capable of putting in. Like in Tony Hawk's you can do an impossible, but
yes,
in the case of Skate, it's very hard to put that into like a movement, because basically an impossible, to put it very simply, is you wrap it around in like a 180 direction like that around your foot, and it's very hard to like do that with a twin stick. So basically what they do is you do a 360 pop shove it, but you hang your back foot down so that it wraps around. And like, there's so many extra things that you just would not expect to be in there. Dark slides where you can turn the board over and you can catch it upside down and you can grind on the grip tape and then you can flip it back over and land back on it again. Like, it's real skateboarding nerd stuff, but there's so many things that you can do. And it just means like it for me, it's very much like power washing simulator in terms of like you can turn your brain off, and you have to get to a certain level where you're very good at it that you then can switch your brain off. But I'm there now. It took about 40-50 hours, but I can now basically I can do everything. Yeah, I'll fall down quite a lot, but it's I can turn my brain off and just skate around, and it's really, really nice. It's the most authentic thing in terms of skateboarding that I've ever played, and I'm almost sure, unless EA do something wild, it's going to put EA's Skate to shame, the new one together.
Fair play. Because it sounds very complex from what you're describing. Like, I'm not going to pretend to be an expert in skating. Like, I used to play a lot of Tony Hawk's Pro Skater back when I was a kid, but I haven't played it in way over a decade. So I'm very sort of out of touch on those kind of games. But it does sound like it's got a lot of content, and especially for skateboarders like yourself. So it's good to hear something that's like really captures that experience. People who do want something more realistic, because I mean, like I said, I used to love Tony Hawk's, but I was under no delusions that it was a realistic experience of what it's like to be a skateboarder. Can't just press circle and do an ollie or whatever.
Yeah, no, I love that.
Like, we were playing Tony Hawk, so like there's an input and you press square, you press up at the same time, you do a kickflip. Whereas with this one, you have to make sure that you flick for an ollie, you have to flick it a certain way, you have to catch it. Like there's so many parts to one tiny movement. It's crazy.
You know, it seems so cool that it has that much depth to it. Like, and I think when sometimes you can go for ultra realism and then you make the game not fun because it gets too tedious and boring and grinding. But yeah, when you're able to make it have that hyper realism, but it's still fun, I think that's a really good game design.
Yeah, in terms of simulation games, it's one of those, like, I know it's not my thing, it's a very niche in itself, but like farming simulator, you get out of that what you put in, because there's so many moving parts to it, and within the farming and agricultural community, they really appreciate that because they get so many of the things right, and it, to anyone else, really tedious, no one wants to do it. Or like Euro Truck Simulator, people love that as well, and it's the same thing. It's like relentlessly perfect physics in a lot of ways, and that's what Session does. It gets the physics perfect, and the thing about that as well is you can go into the physics engine and you can tweak it any way you want. So you can change the gravity, you can change like the friction levels, you can change like your push speed. Like you can change so much to make it into like an authentic experience. Like I said, I could talk shop all day about it.
It's great that you're so passionate about it. I think it's good to find a game that sort of really latches on to the stuff you genuinely enjoy to do. So it's really good to hear that's what Skate offers for you. So I can definitely understand why you've put it at number one for yourself.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's the thing. And whenever I go out and skate myself, all I need is like a curb or a ledge, and that's me sorted for hours. So whenever you give me like a whole city based on like New York and Philadelphia and San Francisco, like I've got so much to do. I'll never get bored. So yeah, that is our indie games of the year, guys. What do we think? Happy enough?
Yeah.
Of our decision.
Yeah, I mean, I think it had some pretty fun sounding games from what like you guys have like introduced to me as well. Because like I said, I'd heard of some of them, but I hadn't played them myself. So it sounds like lots of like really good indie games that have been released this year. Still stand my mind, of course, including KO, Callum.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I think of my ones, I would definitely still put them in the order I did. So Beacon Pines, definitely check it out, and again, Tunic, so worth it.
Yeah, no, I'm really excited to try out the games that all of y'all recommended. I feel like, unfortunately, this year, I feel like I didn't enjoy some of the games as much as I did the previous year. Like, I don't know, Disco Elysium, Amore, and then obviously like years ago, like Undertale. Some of those indie games still really captured my interest a little bit more, but it was still really cool to see like the new takes on certain things, like the West and all these other little mechanics too. So I was really excited to see what comes out next year too.
Also, just quickly, I couldn't add it as it wasn't a whole game, but honorable mention to the Bug Snacks DLC. I love Big Snacks because I love Bug Snacks. I've loved it because that was one of the games that was released when the PS5 first came out. I didn't have a PS5, but it came. I had a PS4, which was also on, and it came to Xbox Game Pass back in, I want to say, April, along with the DLC, and it's just regular Bug Snacks, but really big, and it was brilliant, and it offered a whole new area and, like, new lore to explore. It was perfect. It was wonderful. So if you've got Bug Snacks, check, and you haven't played it in a while, go check it out, because it's a free DLC that was launched. So you just need to update it, and you have, like, 3 extra hours of content. So, and if you don't have Bug Snacks, go get Bug Snacks. It's amazing. I love it. So yeah, Team Bug Snacks.
Oh, I might have to give that a try. I really liked Hollow Knight, so maybe it'll carry the Hollow Knight vibes to that game.
Yeah, I did try it myself. I think I got about halfway through it, and I ran out of steam on it. Like, it was very Pokemon-esque, Pokemon Snap-esque, and it was good. But it got to the point where I was like, okay, I've had enough of that. Okay.
Never enough. Like I said, it's cute and it's fun. Those are the 2 things I look for.
Awesome, guys. Well, listen, thank you for joining me. Thank you, everyone else, for joining us. Melika, do you want to give someone...
So if you've enjoyed hearing me talk about games, I've also got my own podcast called Exploring Game Pass, and you can access all the episodes of that from www.screenhype.co.uk. There's a section that just says Exploring Game Pass podcast, and you can find all the episodes. Every 2 weeks, I will talk about one game that's on the Game Pass service, as well as all the games coming to and leaving it. So if you've got an Xbox or a PC that has Game Pass on it, then go for it. And if you don't have an Xbox, that's fine, because it's on PC. So everyone has a laptop or something. Go get Game Pass. It's amazing. I'm not like affiliate or anything with them. I just love it. There's so many indies. Like, it's well over 100 indie games that you may never get the opportunity to play. And I've been introduced to so many gems through it. So, yeah, I love it.
So that's where you can find Melika if you want more. And if you want to find all of us, you can go and check out Indie Game Culture, where there are articles coming through thick and fast. You'll find all 3 of us on there. We tend to do reviews, we do listicles, we do guides, we do everything. If you want to find out about your favorite indies, you will find it here, and you will find everything you need. But that's all from us. So say your goodbyes. Goodbye, everybody.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Bye. Thanks so much for tuning in.
Bye.